Everybody, thank you for joining. My name is Marta. Loachamin. I'm one of the Boulder County Commissioners. I'm here to talk about one of my favorite topics, shelter, housing, stability, mental health, the beginning of opportunities to think about generational wealth, potentially investing in education, a small business, and it's just my belief that that all starts when you have a place to call your home and a place where you know you're going to rest your head. So that is the context of what we're here to talk about. I do want to acknowledge that we've got some elected officials. I just want to bring one online. Could you just give us a thumbs up if you can hear us okay, just so that I don't. Amazing. We got a thumbs up from our senator. I feel really good. So we'll really quick, we have some other elected officials here in the room. And so if I miss somebody, let me know. We've got Jen Cowish with Superior Council, Tina Marquez from City of Boulder Council. Is anybody else? Okay, good. And I know we've got some folks on virtually, including Congressman Luis's office, who's been texting me, and Senator Bennett. So I want to just give a little bit of background in regards to what we'll hear about outside of that context. And I want to appreciate Senator Michael Bennett, who joined us, because he had invited me with his team and a group of folks in the housing space to join in a housing roundtable a few years ago. And so this, as I was thinking about who else needs to be in this room, somebody else who's very interested from a federal level, but also a key proponent of Colorado and the work we're doing here, to understand what are the next steps for housing. I understand, Senator, that you are going to have to be hoping to be here in person, and it's in DC, and we could all be hopeful about maybe something happening there in DC. But I just wanted to give you a quick opportunity to start with an introduction, because I understand you might have to get off the phone for a minute for a vote.
Thanks, Marta. Is that you speaking? I just want to make sure.
Yes, that's me.
Thank you. I just want to thank you, Commissioner, for organizing all this and having everybody there. It's an amazing panel, group of people. I apologize for being late, or not late. I guess I'm not late, but I'm not there because I'm stuck here in the depths of this shutdown, and we desperately need to figure out how to make this place more functional. But for the moment, it is not terribly, and I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to figure out how to get out of this shutdown over the course of the weekend. The American people need us to do that, but we're also in a fight for healthcare at the same time. Marta, as a way of introduction here, I think also my wife, Susan, may be there today. Are you there, Susan?
I am.
Great, thanks for being there. Who's worked on these housing issues for so long. And as Marta and I discussed, I agree with her completely that so much of what we treasure about human beings begins and ends with whether or not we have a house. And I think that it is most of the freedoms that we hold most dear are hard to imagine having unless you are confident that you're going to be able to have a roof over your head. Housing has become the #1 issue in Colorado. We're now, I think, we have the fifth most expensive median family house price in the nation, and we've got to address that. I mean, there's not a county left in Colorado where people feel confident that their kids are going to be able to afford to live there, and our kids don't believe they're ever going to be able to afford to live in Colorado. Just a few years ago, when I was the superintendent of schools in Denver, I used to have a faculty meeting every single day at the end of the day in one of our schools, sometimes two of our schools. And I almost never met a teacher who didn't live in Denver. It was one of the great things about teaching in the Denver public schools, as opposed to Seattle or San Francisco or Portland. People could still live in the communities where they taught, and not just in one community, but all across the city and county of Denver. I'm sorry to say those days are gone, not just for Denver, but all across our state in rural and urban areas. And we have a real challenge for working people who can't live close to where they work and who struggle to be able to extend their day to take care of their kids at the end of the workday because they have to travel such long distances for work. And just in addition to that, I think there's the issue of young people unable to stay in Colorado and seniors that are in housing that may or may not be appropriate for where they want to be at this time in their lives, who are finding it harder and harder and harder to be able to make other choices. So I know one of the topics today is on trying to create more variety of housing. I think obviously that's a critical component. We've got to build more housing. We've got to figure out how to do it more cheaply, close to where people live, and hopefully less expensively. But I look forward to, for as long as I can stay, I'm going to stay. And then I'm hoping to get my notes from Susan, and failing that, I hope I'll be able to get them from the commissioner. But thank you so much to all of you for being part of this important conversation today. And I know I have high hopes that in Colorado, we're going to be able to meet this challenge and maybe be able to pull something off that other folks have not been able to pull off yet across the country, and be a beacon for the rest of the nation when it comes to trying to reduce the cost of housing and make it more available for working people all across the country. So thanks, Marta, and I will stop there.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here, and in and out, as do what you need to do on behalf of the country.
Thank you. Thank you.
And-
I'll take your proxy to the floor, and you can have my proxy there.
And I hope that you can listen in, because we're going to move into our introduction. And when I sent out a message that said I need our housing experts in the room for this conversation, my belief is we must start doing some significant coalition building. It's going to take all of us to come to some solutions around the housing crisis, because it's not new. It's been here in Colorado for a while. And so I just want to appreciate the folks who are at the table, who answered the call in regards to what's happening truly in 2025, in regards to the housing market. When we talk about homeowners, home buyers who want to live and work and thrive in their Colorado community. And so I've invited several folks here. So real estate practitioners, your introduction is going to be, please, your name and your title, a short, brief story, because I know we could talk for hours, a brief story of an example about a home buyer that you have been working with in 2025, and what the barrier has been for them to be able to buy a home. And for my other experts, like a title company person, and then our National Association Realtor, who's on their way, they brought some data. So it would be very short, just data to help us center what we're talking about. So I'm going to start today with everybody here in person. I'm going to start at the end of the table, please, for an introduction. And I did get a message from someone online, just a reminder to speak up a little for the speaker, for those folks.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much. My name is Dan McCauley. I'm the Executive Director and CEO for Flatirons Habitat for Humanity, serving Boulder and Broomfield. I'm here with my colleague, Dave Emerson, who serves the St. Lorraine Habitat for Humanity in northern Boulder County.
Thank you.
My name is Roberto. I'm a mortgage lender with FNBO. I serve as the Boulder County, Will County areas, all of northern Colorado. And one thing that has happened and that I've been witnessing a lot is, family of 3 people qualifying for one house. Three people qualifying for just one house to be able to afford the payment.
Thank you.
My name is Valeria Delgado with Location Real Estate. I serve mostly northern Colorado, Boulder County, and Wells County. I did bring a story. So one of the biggest barriers my buyers are facing in today's market is affordability. A mortgage payment has become the hardest hurdle, even with families' combined incomes or receive down payment assistance or seller concession. Right now, I have a buyer who's purchasing a home with their mother so they can combine their incomes and afford a modest home. They're currently under contract, and even with both incomes, the monthly payment will be tight. My lender partner went above and beyond trying to make it work, running multiple scenarios, comparing different rate buy down options, and even shopping around from homeowners insurance to bring down the payment as much as possible. We truly explored every option before moving forward. Another experience reminded me that affordability isn't just about getting into a home. It's also about staying in one. I had a listing that sat on the market for 3 months. At that point, the home wasn't selling and the sellers could no longer afford their mortgage payments. They also didn't have enough equity to sell without taking a loss. I referred them to my lender partner who guided them to contact their bank about a loan modification. They applied directly, were approved, and their payment allowed them to stay in their home. Those experiences really highlight that down payment assistance helps people get in the door, but it doesn't always help ownership sustainable. Rising property taxes, insurance, and maintenance costs can stretch a family's budget too far, especially for those already at their limit just to qualify. Thank you.
I'm Reagan Sample. I'm associate broker up in the northern Colorado Longmont area. And some stories that came to my mind right away, kind of already mentioned. Insurance is a really big one. What you would look at for first-time buyers, like entry level. Typically, entry level homes, their condos, their townhouses. The insurance, how it's impacting the HOA payments. Or to have smaller HOA payments, what they're doing, how they're writing their insurance, they're not. There's a property that my buyers are looking for these lower cost homes aren't able to get the financing for it. And I've seen struggles in the permanently affordable homes too, where they qualify for the income, then they aren't qualifying like their debt to income ratio. If you add on maybe student debt or a car loan, they're really quickly out of that and out of that formula, and it's not working for them.
I'm Francine Trujillo. I am a real estate agent. And to kind of piggyback what Reagan was saying, what I'm seeing is to be eligible to be Fannie and Freddie, I'm so sorry, they have a 10% master insurance policy deductible. So if we can get that to 8% or lower, that's going to help the interest rate to stay down. And that way the client can actually purchase the home without having to reach the HOA. The board of directors have to reach the HOA. So I think that's an issue right now, is that the insurance policy needs to be lowered, but for it to be Fannie and Freddie eligible and keep those payments down. And I can talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it is, and it's causing people not to be able to buy because of it. Thank you.
Andrea Mengel with Slifer Smith and Frampton Real Estate. We're one of the largest, if not, I think the largest independently owned realty in the state of Colorado, operating across the state from the Front Range to the mountain communities. And we're seeing this throughout. The real estate prices are going through the roof. It's not only hard for first-time home buyers to get in, but as we're looking to attract talent from across the nation and bring them here to Colorado, even people like CEOs and executive level people, they're not seeing an equivalent buy here that equals what they're in their home state or where they may be relocating from. If they're on the coasts, East Coast or West Coast, California, our prices look comparable. But if they're coming from the Midwest and they have a very nice home, that home could be worth $600,000, $700,000, and they don't have a comparable product to the family on a single income. At times, it's very hard, and so those people are making choices to stay. Our workforce, our companies, our state doesn't attract those people because of some of those challenges. So thank you, Commissioner Loachamin, for having me here today. I'm glad to be part of this group and speaking on this.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Loachamin, and thank you, Senator for coming to today. Muriel Williams-Thompson. I am a broker at Town and Country Realty, but also the vice chair of the Association of Real Estate Brokers. So here, I see everything that has been mentioned before me, but another thing I can say is for myself and just those who I deal with day to day, attainable housing and workforce housing is a must. I've come to not be such a fan of affordable housing, for just the term itself, because it means a lot of different things to other people. But here, for me in real estate, it means a lot of housing that people can't get to. And so there's very few times that we have people who fit into this neat little pretty box for the affordable housing program. So it is that program is actually failing. If you take a look at the MLS, any MLS that you're looking at in Colorado, you pull up any of those affordable housing units, they've been sitting around for a very long time.
A lot of times they've been on the market for over a year. It's not because we don't have people who want to purchase them, it's because we have people who cannot fit into the little pretty mold that it's designed for. So these properties are not getting to those that are needing them. I also heard things when it comes to homeowners association dues. Homeowners associations are becoming more and more of an issue. It's also the last piece of real estate that is not regulated. Every single aspect of real estate actually has the answer to DORA in some capacity. HOAs do not. And that is becoming more of a growing issue, not only when it comes to insurance policies, when it comes to increasing dues, when it comes to property management companies giving false information and misinformation, when it comes to attorneys that are giving bad information to the communities. They're relying on these professionals to be able to tell them what's best for their communities, but they're being treated like renters in their own communities. We also have a lot of those units that are for sale in the condominium subdivisions. They're just sitting as well because you have other law or other rules for the associations that aren't technically the rest of the law. They have it where they needed to be able to move. And I have a veteran who wanted to move into a community, but was told that they wouldn't be able to rent out their unit if they actually, I'm not sorry, a reserve duty buyer that wanted to be able to rent out his unit if he got called to duty. And so there's a lot of communities he cannot buy in because they won't allow him to do that. So there's a number of issues that we're seeing in real estate. So those are just a few. But I could say another one too, as we're having a growing number of foreclosures that are happening because we have a lot of people who are facing hard crime. I would like to see the laws that are strengthened here in Colorado and maybe across the nation when it comes to homestead law and creditors that are coming after that equity.
Thank you.
I have a big wish list.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tucker Brock. I'm here representing Land Title Guarantee Company. We are a local title company. We are a leader in Colorado escrow and title services, and we're still privately held, which is something to be proud of, as most of my competitors have merged, acquisitioned into large corporations. With that said, I am a resident of Boulder County. I grew up in Boulder County, and Zach Robles here from several other panelists. The affordability issue is a concern, and from us on the title side, some notable trends that we've been seeing. I'll go more into stats later. I brought a bunch of things with me, but we are seeing frequently that, you know, those who are able to have a parent, grandparent, aunt, uncle are assisting with down payment. They're not necessarily on title, they're not an owner, but they are granting funds, just showing that distribution of income inequality and that family wealth inequality being even more of a factor into Colorado housing. Now, we as a title company, we don't track that. It's not our jobs, but we see it frequently. And then to the note on HOAs and attached, we call it attached, you know, condos and townhouses, they're attached units. Those HOAs, as someone who has a couple of units in HOAs, it's a major concern, and HOAs are unregulated, not only in their capacity, but also what their fees are, what their rubs are, what they charge folks in the community to buy or sell. Now, are they a couple $100 fees? Yes. Is it still an impact on a first-time home buyer potentially? And with that, thank you so much. I appreciate being invited to join this group.
Thank you. Susan, thank you.
I'm Susan Daggett. I direct, in addition to being Michael's ears for this meeting, I direct the Rocky Mountain Land Use Institute at the University of Denver, and I'm on faculty in the law school. So I actually have a professional interest in this conversation as well, but I'm mostly here to listen because I have a lot to learn. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan?
Yep, Susanna Lopez-Baker, I'm Boulder County Housing Authority Executive Director. I'm really excited to learn from all of you as Boulder County Housing Authority is going to invest in home ownership, affordable home ownership. It's the first time for us, and we're bringing 80 units online here at this site, at that lot right next to you. So give us a year and a half, it's going to look a lot different. But particularly what I'm most interested is cultivating maybe non-traditional buyers, so buyers of low income status, buyers of color, buyers that we don't see very frequently. Mostly because as LIHTC rents continue to grow, some of them are larger than most people I know's mortgages. So I think that people with lower income status can't afford, even if it takes 3 people on a mortgage, they can't afford to purchase a home. So we're beyond excited to bring that to Boulder County. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I wanna just recap a couple of things that I heard in regards to when we start thinking, 'cause we'll be going towards the, like, what is the policy, like, what are some of the policy, that's why we're all here in proactively. Generative discussion, what's missing, and we've got local folks, local elected officials in the room, we've got some state elected officials in the room, and we've got the outside local partners as well here. So I say that so we can start thinking about that, but I heard some questions around and feelings around and experiences in attainable housing, workforce housing, HOA dues, questions around regulations, restrictions, how attorneys might be involved, reality of foreclosure, how do we create accessibility for non-traditional buyers. So just to recap things, here's one of the questions that came up, and I'm gonna ask participants who are practitioners to respond to help us understand for policymakers that are listening in, at what point of the home buying process are you seeing your buyers feel or confront the barriers?
I'd say right at pre-approval, right in the beginning of it, because, you know, seeing how much they can afford and what is actually out there in that price range, especially for first-time home buyers. A lot of them are starting at condo and townhome level. And because of what I mentioned with the HOA dues either being too high to cover some of these items, or the master insurance policy being where it's at, I think that's kind of where the problem is.
Yeah, I'd agree. Like you said, at the beginning, and then the different bumps throughout. So they see what they're approved for, they start shopping, and then they see even problems with that. Maybe even they can afford the, you know, the down payment, the mortgage, and even with the HOA, but then they run into a hurdle where the lender can't loan on it because of just how they're qualifying.
Or it being a non-mortgageable item.
Thank you. Let's go that way and we'll come back around. Okay.
Yeah, so definitely, I agree, it's at the beginning stage of it, of the pre-approval, because of the taxes insurance, and because they're either already at their max amount, which might not be enough depending on what county you're looking at. And then they're either having to move outside to a non-desirable area or to a property that is not, it might be a fixer upper and needs to be money to be put into it. And that's something that a lot of them don't have. They're also looking at their down payment. They're looking at seller concessions to buy down the rate for them. So that, I think that's another hurdle that they're looking at the very beginning.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it is at the beginning, you know, when I first meet with clients, that's, you know, that's the first thing. When, you know, they work in Boulder County, and they have to buy something really because that's the only place affordable for them to buy a house. And but then once they do the math, and like I have to go to work in Boulder and then drive all the way from really to Boulder, then it doesn't make sense. So then, and they just get discouraged and they just don't want to do anything. And it's how, you know, being a homeowner is not for me, and it's just never meant, it wasn't meant to be. And they get discouraged. They don't want to do it anymore. And then they want to get other people to come and apply with them. And it just makes things so difficult, you know. And it's just, you know, the house pricing has increased so much, but not the our salaries. It's that's the bottom line, and it's just sometimes it's discouraging. And you know, they get to know it the first time they meet with the lender. Like they might not be qualified for that.
Marta. Oh,
I would go with Habitat Home Buyers. I would go a step further back. We work with families who are at 80% of AMI down to 30% of AMI, which is a home ownership market that not many are in. And so I would say that we start running into barriers, looking at land purchase, minimum home size, minimum lot size, parking requirements, setback requirements that make property too expensive, because we can't put enough units on it to make it cash flow when we're subsidizing the unit to 6 figures a family. And that's before the family gets even into the market. We have 1,250 families on our waiting list.
Thank you. I heard some policy ideas.
Yeah.
In case anyone behind me or around me missed her.
Oh, you picked up on that, did you?
So let's come back here. Is Andrea, were you next?
I could go. So I agree with what everybody said about the new home buyer. And I'm gonna take it in a different direction a little bit to focus on the current homeowner. Because for a new home to be available, that owner has to be able to sell and move on to something else. In Boulder County, it's getting tougher for us to stay as residents, to move to something that could be a little bit bigger or could accommodate a growing family. When a lot of the home buyers that bought 10 years ago, maybe with little kids, toddlers, whose kids are now teens, are looking for a new home, they got in at a 2.5% mortgage. They have a payment that could be under $2,000 a month. That doesn't exist anymore. So those people are limited in what choices they have to be able to move and stay within the community, allowing for that home to open up. That home, if it is an older home, is the home that looks like it's the entry level home that a family coming in. Our inventory gets limited that way. But then the thing that's hurting the current residents is that those residents bought that home maybe at $500,000, $600,000 10 years ago. We're seeing our taxes double. We're seeing our assessment rates continue to increase the values, which then affect our taxes. And then every day our elected officials are faced with decisions on how to provide services for our residents. And those services may come in the form of an additional sales tax, an additional property tax, or an additional fee. They're reasonable at times. Boulder City Council just looked at how to pay for maintaining the transportation system. Pretty reasonable solution. Every property owner has to pay $54. Doesn't seem like a lot. But last year on the ballot, we have a community that has approved something like 33 out of the last 35 tax questions we've been asked. And we saw the BVSC school tax. We're in support of our schools. That went through. We saw a library district fee. That came through. And these things added to the median home in Boulder, $700 additional per year to your tax bill. When the fees come in, that adds a little bit more. It's the death by 1,000 cuts syndrome that we face. And those current homeowners, they're not $1.4 million home buyers. They were $500,000 home buyers. And for the older folks that are on even limited income, they were $300,000 home buyers now faced with $1.4 million home costs. So that's a real dilemma. And I don't envy the position that our elected officials are in, because they have to figure out how to provide mental health services, how to provide transportation maintenance. So what are those policy decisions we're making? What are those funding mechanisms we're looking at? And what are those costs that we have to make on that issue, but is affecting everybody else across the board?
Hey, Marta, Marta,
Oh, I think I see Senator Bennett's hand.
Go
Marta,
ahead, Senator.
is it all right? May I ask a question before I have to go? Could I ask
It looks like
We're not hearing you.
can you hear me now?
Not yet.
How about now?
he's not muted. It's on his side.
Hello?
We heard you before, but we're not hearing you now.
I'm sorry,
Oh, the outside audience can hear.
I'll try to come back.
Online, it sounds like they can hear you, but we lost the.
He's gonna reconnect.
Okay, he's gonna reconnect. So while he's doing that, are you, Mary, I'll just respond to the question about when your buyers are seeing the barriers. At what
Yes.
part of the process?
So I could say, well, every aspect of it. I can say, but it does start in the beginning, and then a lot of times now we're seeing it, which it went away from, there were less and less before that we would see it while we're in the process. We actually knew what to expect as real estate professionals. We all knew like where we have issues. This is not so much right now. We don't know. You know, we have insurance that's going through the roof. And my understanding is that we have a lot of insurance companies that are pulling out of Colorado. So that is a very big must. But that also catapults us into the HOA issue. We have a lot of HOA homeowners association that's saying they're increasing dues to unaffordable rates for their residents and for those who are future buyers because of insurance policies. But we know that there's other reasons as well, but that is a big reason that they can point to. So I'd say insurance is number one, something that we need to take a look at when it comes to affordability. But for those who actually are dealing with affordable housing here, I would love for you to take a look at the future for those buyers, because this is a real here and now. I have a veteran client that actually
Sorry.
I did.
So sorry to interrupt you. We're gonna come back to the veteran client story. Senator, I saw your hand up.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'll wait till you're done, though. The person who's speaking should keep going, and then I'll wait. I'll just go
Okay.
ahead. Thank you.
So I have a veteran client that I sold a property to probably about 9 years ago. It's an affordable housing unit in Denver. Right now, they have a special assessment that has been brought to the attention of the community. The assessment is $42,000. Now, the unit, when I sold it, was in excellent condition. It was practically new because of the renovations that had been done. But this is a gentleman who's actually by himself. We were very specific about this unit to get it because he can't do stairs, he doesn't drive, and he needed to be on the ground level in a condominium. So we did that. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. He's now to the point where he needs to exit and to move in with family because of his care issues. This is an issue. So now he's looking at whatever equity that he does have in the property, and you have the affordable housing program telling him how much he can actually sell that unit for. And he has a $42,000 assessment that even as an affordable unit, he did not get any breaks. Like, you know, for having an affordable unit when the rest of the units are not affordable. And this is now a real scenario. So, you know, a lot of these well-intended neighborhoods that are being put up and for affordable housing purposes, they're not thinking about the future, not thinking about when that family needs to grow inside or is growing in size and they need to exit. It's taking them a lot of effort to be able to sell those properties beyond that. And a lot of times, you know, if they're in a financial situation where someone has lost their job, if they have some kind of change in income or anything like that, they cannot wait. And so we're going to lose a lot of those units as we are having.
Thank you. Senator Bennett?
Thanks, Marta. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Let me just ask a couple questions. I appreciate it. I'm so grateful for the conversation so far. One is, I mean, obviously some of the cause of our dramatically increasing prices is an imbalance between supply and demand. I wonder if anybody there thinks there's anything else that's really important, or if that's the most important cause, because 15 years ago, even in Boulder, it was ridiculously expensive, but not like it is today throughout Colorado, not like it is today. But is there something else besides just an imbalance between demand and supply that you think you would say over 15 years has made a big difference, taking into account everything that you said about rising insurance and rising HOA, and even I remember Marta talking about closing costs when the last time we were sitting together, and how expensive closing costs had just become in terms of transactions. And that's sort of one question, but the other one, and probably more important, is when you think about all the things you're talking about the inability of people to find starter homes, the inability of families that are in their homes to find places where they can kind of move up, where seniors can move out, just a lack of immobility in some ways in terms of housing. When it all, you know, when you add that all up, what does that do to the fabric of our community? What does it mean to to Colorado or to Boulder or to the American dream for people to feel as stressed out as they do about questions relating to housing and unable to make what choices that maybe we took for granted for a long time that no longer we can take for granted. I mean, these questions about what does that mean for public services? What does that mean for taxation? What does that mean? I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about generally about what all this adds up to, you know, the undermining of the American dream.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
Senator, to your first question about, is it just a supply and demand issue? I would say that it's the unavailability of trades labor and that cost of trades labor is a significant driver, particularly in the new construction space and in the renovation space. I would say that is a different aspect of the supply and demand piece of the question. And to your more theoretical.
And I would throw building materials on top of that too.
And
Sure.
And if we could have just a little bit of certainty about what might be coming in the next week, days, months, you know, do we have tariffs or don't we, right? You know,
Right.
how much is a 2x4 gonna cost me today?
Yep.
Some of those things, particularly in the nonprofit space, that would be, the emotional weight of uncertainty is a big piece in delivering service. And I see it in my colleagues. But the very questions about what happens to our communities when our school teachers and our police and our firefighters can't afford to live in them, is real. And I certainly don't have an answer to that.
Is there anyone else that want to answer that question right now? Okay.
So definitely supply and demand is always a way to actually bring. I mean, if you have more supply, but organically prices do come down. We're seeing an improvement in affordability with the high number. I know our state has given very big precedence to heavy dense housing, but for rent, not for sale. And so that's great, obviously, for those who actually have to have an immediate situation. But when you want to take a step forward and really invest into your communities and stay there and raise your families and things like that, which as real estate professionals, that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with those who have actually overcome certain things they're building and they're wanting to grow some major roots. And they might want somewhere that they can actually stay and raise their families and maybe be able to pass that asset on. As far as supply, we do have some supply out there too. And that's when we're talking about I'm gonna go back to all the issues when it comes to homeowners associations and things like that. There's a lot of sitting inventory that's just not appealing right now because of the issues that they have going on, because of the pricing of what the insurance policies might cost, because of we may have 2 and 3 bedroom condominiums or units that might be in the 200,000s. But then we have an HOA dues that are about $800 a month or in excess to that. So that actually that makes it so it's not as affordable. And so those values are continuing to plummet. And then you have people who are saying, you know what, forget it, I'm abandoning this property. So you have a lot of abandoned properties that are sitting inside these buildings that you have, and the HOA problem becomes even worse for those who have stayed, because now they have to figure out how to pay for those things. So they're going up on the residences that are there. And meanwhile, you have a lot of crumbling buildings that are happening. So if you have a crumbling building, and you have your neighbors right next to you, they can't pay for their things. Now it becomes a problem. I would say it would be nice to see if there were some of the subsidies that were being handed to some of these communities. And maybe they have some incentive to get these units back in order, get their budgets back in order, and get their communities thriving, so that the vacant units that they do have in their communities can become appealing. And then we have buyers that want to take them on.
Thank you. If I can, I'm gonna ask, we have representatives from the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals and also the National Association of Realtors. So if you want to give an intro, we started with our story, just a brief story about a home buyer who had confronted the barriers to ownership. If you both want to start with that intro, and then we were asking a question about at what point are you all seeing the barriers? Or if you want to just answer a question that you've heard since you were able to join us, that's great too. And then I also know that Tepper has the data, which I think would be helpful to insert the number of unoccupied, not owner-occupied properties versus owner-occupied properties. So I think that will help in some of the questions you had, Senator, as well. Now,
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Marta. I am here representing NARIP, the Northern Colorado chapter. NARIP is the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, and I sit on the board as the Government Affairs Director. I do want to piggy on what you were saying because recently, one of the stories that I'd like to share, successful flight attendant bought a condo just a couple of years ago in the Denver area. And the HOA dues are so much that this successful flight attendant, who also is a realtor, can no longer afford to live in Huntington. So she is now having to rent it out. And now she is looking at renting a property in the suburbs to try to just be able to afford living. That's where, you know, this lands. The other story that I'd like to share is with the administration changes of May 25th, where your folks that are lawfully documented, that have a EAD card, an employment authorization document, no longer qualify for FHA loans. We now have well-qualified borrowers that we have taken out of this market that can no longer get approved because their only choice of a loan is a conventional. And as we know, conventional loans, they are more strict. They're a lot harder to qualify people. They, many of the times, are asked to have additional reserves, not just what they have to bring into the table, but they need to have additional reserves to compensate for factors such as having a lower credit score. And while the regulation or the guideline says you just need to have a minimum credit score of a 620, that's not true all the time. Because if they have other factors of not having sufficient reserves or assets, maybe their job stability hasn't been as great, that isn't always the case. It doesn't always apply where a minimum credit score of a 620 will get you qualified with a conventional loan. So what we're seeing now is a lot of these DACA recipients, which compose 30% of all homeowners in our nation, now not being able to qualify because the only path that they have is a conventional loan.
thank you. Number?
Hi, my name is Guilford Adams. I am a National Association of Realtors Board Director for the National Association of Realtors and also on the Fair Housing Policy Committee for the National Association of Realtors. I share a story and then I tell you what I see from a national side, what's going down to the local and that sort of thing. I don't know if you want me to share that good news yet. Well, it's not good news because we haven't got it done. Okay, I share that I do. Okay, so I'm working with a 28-year-old professional. He's been trying to buy a condominium for the last 4 months. We have worked with he's probably been to 5 lending institutions trying to work this out. We are working with one now, trying to figure out what this guy can qualify for. Now, understand this guy makes $95,000, okay? He just want to buy a condominium. He said, I'm not ready for yard work and all of that. And just like Muriel and a bunch of others said here today, the HOA. For him to get in for a $360,000 or $370,000 condominium in a decent area that he liked, because they like closer to the downtown area, his payment is from $3,100 to $3,400 a month. And he said, Milford, that's just crazy. By the time we add the insurance and taxes and the HOA that it costs, he said, I need to be around somewhere between 24. He said, I would even stretch for 26. So in reality, we're looking into 300 to 330 now, but understand he's not getting what he wants. It's not an area that he wants, and all of the above. And so I think that's the pain point, what we are experiencing, even though there is the buyer's market out there, because properties are selling longer. The inventory is just, the market is just correcting itself. It's just resetting. It's not going down enough. I mean, when we look in Boulder County, the average single family dwelling is still $800,000. That's from the market trend report that goes nationally from the state of Colorado, from Denver Metro Association of Realtors. Everybody uses it. Those are the medium price. And then the average sale price is over $1 million in Boulder County. The question is, and so one of the things I think is everything that everyone was speaking already. I do think there's other areas that make sure that we don't get off the radar. So we got to look at, okay, where are we going to be at 10 years from now? I think Boulder County is estimating, 10,700 some homes, affordable homes that are needed. What's going to change the inventory here is, one, we have to make sure if that's what we're saying in the next 10 years need to happen, which I think is going to need to be more than that to really bring down costs. I think we need to be aware of making sure that we maintain the affordability homes that we have today and we don't lose them, because a lot of them is on deed restricted. And the deed restricted a lot of times was only in the early years, 10, 15, 20 years. So they lose that inventory. So we have to practice to make sure we hold on to that. And the other big push is 2030 and 2050, there is a push that you will own nothing and rent everything. The institutional investors already own 20% of the inventory. In 10 years, they're projecting 40% of the inventory in the United States. And they're pushing everybody to to rental. And those are the institutional buyers, the VCs, the Chase Morgan and the Blackstone and all of, they're rocking out there, buying everything that they see and then pushing it towards rental. One of the other things we have to be aware of, just like the gentleman on the end said, we got to be aware of, we got to make it more friendly for developers to be able to come in. We need to look at our zoning. We need to look at our incentives and make sure they're friendly towards building homes for the future. I mean, and I think that's one of the struggles that we see with developers. I know Denver, we just passed some of the construction defect, but we've been lobbying for that, Muriel, 3 years, 4 years, and we finally got some part of it done. Some part.
It was just a lot that was done too much in the other direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Creating the right inventory for a lot of what people need.
So I share this with you guys. It is not done. This is what, and I want you guys to understand that the political landscape have changed with the Federal Reserves and the White House. That's just reality. One of the goals that we was working on the national, working with the Federal Reserve, is that anyone that has a 2 or 3% or whatever they have right now, they was going to make it affordable. That will give the incentive to loosen up inventory, and they could go buy still at the 2 or 3%. And understand we were getting traction to make sure that the homeowners that got the 2 or 3%, that's the only reason that they're not moving. They can't buy what they have right now, size-wise or anything else. But if we can get that passed, that will loosen up inventory as well. In order to bring down the prices, all of these pieces, with everything else that everyone said, all of these pieces, we all have to work together as a team and help push that market to make sure we have more products out there for individuals that want to buy a home and be home ownership. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tucker, I'm asking you just throw in a little bit of the data. What'd you bring?
Absolutely. So I pulled some data from Boulder County and the County of Denver for owner occupied versus non-owner occupied. How do we figure it out? First, with any stat, how do we come up with it? We look at the property address and then compare that to the mailing address. If it is the same, we call it owner occupied. If it's not the same, we call it non-occupied. The best way we can use through public records to pull this data. Is it perfect? No, but it's going to be the closest we'll get to it. So looking at Boulder County, I broke it into detached and attached because we've been talking about the attached market with those HOAs and the struggles. I live in an HOA. I've had several special assessments. Our insurance has gone through the roof. I know it's a pain, but it's an old community. It's built in the late 70s, early 80s. Buildings fall apart. They have a life expectancy, but the prices didn't reflect that for the last 20 years. So then now, as I bought several years ago, hey, building fell apart. Time to do extra, special assessments to fix the siding, the roofs, the driveways, the parking lots, you name it. But looking at our owner versus non-owner occupied, for Boulder County and detached, out of 182,000 units in Boulder County, 81% of that is owner occupied. So we're sitting at 81% owner occupied in Boulder County right now. For non-owner occupied, for a single family detached, right? That's the house with the yard, not attached. 18% is owned by either investors, whether that's a PC, VC, or someone who had multiple properties. That all gets lumped in there. When we look at our attached market, it's much higher. Speaking to that point of VCs and PE, venture capitalists, private equity, purchasing non-owner occupied affordable unit, attached units, we're only at 59.95. So 60% of the attached units in Boulder County are owned by people who live in their unit. The other 40% is owned by people who no longer live in there. Now I know in Boulder County, a lot of that might be people who have a couple condos, not necessarily institutional money, but that also includes the institutional. That includes, the big companies, the big players in our local market who do buy whole communities at a time. Hey, there's a 100-door apartment building. They'll buy the whole thing, turn it into condos, and then sell each individual unit. And why is that profitable for them? Because of condo defect law. Because condo defect law, from what I've heard from the developer clients I've had and the folks I've been in the room with, even with these recent changes, isn't enough for them to go build a new apartment building and then be able to turn it into condos. They'll build it for sale in 7 years once that condo defect law is up. They'll build it for being able to sell those units eventually, but they'll rent it for the first 7 years and then go to sell because they don't want those condo defect law liabilities coming back to them as the developer. Now, when we look at the County of Denver, it's a little bit different. Our single family detached market there is 83% owner occupied. So it's a little bit stronger than the County of Boulder, while our non-owner occupied is at 16.45%. So less than the detached market for PC and VC as we see. But when we switch to the attached market, it's a similar but not as much as Boulder County. We're at 74.3, so roughly 75% is owner occupied in Denver County, whereas non-owner occupied is at 25%. And I think that's because it's a much larger market, but these are trends to keep an eye on going forward.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. We have 2 different pieces that we're gonna work on, and I'm kind of giving the elected officials in the room and online an opportunity to prepare. I want this table to have a little bit of reflection together and opportunity for questions or thoughts together for about 5 minutes. So it's okay to not, if you don't have something to say specifically right now, that's okay. we're gonna ask our elected officials for any reflections they've had or any ideas or questions, like we heard something like, does that mean me in my role, like where my level of local government opportunity, any questions that just to clarify something, that, ooh, I might wanna work on this, but I wanna make sure I heard it. And then we may hear back from, Senator Bennett that he also may have gotten called for a vote, so we're gonna be flexible. And then everybody at the table, before we finish, we're gonna ask you to give one ask for elected officials at whichever level as you're talking, it seems like it might be appropriate, so that they have some things to think about too, if they haven't thought about it already. So first, just take a few minutes here at the table. Is there anybody that had a question for other presenters, or thoughts on what we heard?
I had a question. When you're talking about HOA fees, are the HOA fees including the sort of metro district infrastructure costs as well? That's a separate.
That's a mill levy to your tax assessor.
Which could be another conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we talk about policies and so, but
Yeah, I think that's really difficult in a metro district because you're looking at, for example, where I live, I'm on one side of the road, and then a metro district with the new build is on the other side, and they're at 1.9, which is a lot higher, twice, 3 times higher than what we're at. And that's another thing that forces people out of their homes, is being in the metro district. And how do we create a policy around that, around builders? I know that's something that now, in order for them to help build, it's a cost that's going in the metro district. But what do we do about that? How do we create a policy around it?
So from my understanding with local developers who I've talked with, this is not my opinion.
Yeah.
But it really comes down to either the home price is gonna be 20% higher, or your taxes will be much higher that then pay for it. So it's either we have that home price be up here with a lower long-term tax cost, or we shift it and go, hey, we're gonna give this longer-term tax cost, but your entry-level price is lower. And I don't have an answer on which one's right or wrong, but it's just shifting whether we're paying for it today through your, hey, instead of $400,000 home in Frederick, it's gonna be $550, or do we say, hey, it'll still be it'll be $550,
Yeah.
but then your taxes are up, are really low. So it's, which side is it?
In which a lot of the homeowners in new builds are in there at least 2 years, and I see a lot of them selling. They're not lasting long in those new builds. They're 2-3 years, and they're having to sell for much less than what they purchased the home for. There's no equity in the home.
Yeah.
They're losing out.
And this is the tough market cycle.
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing at all. I literally just took a loss on a sale. So I'm well aware personally of it, but it really is, for those new builds, it's, hey, we either have a high purchase price and, lower taxes down the road, or higher taxes. And I think this comes back to a bigger piece of, I'm not saying it's red tape, and not saying we need to fully change policy, but on the idea of the cost to build something new is drastically more expensive than it is to buy existing. And I think that is a fundamental issue, is where we're seeing this split of affordability, because to build a new home used to be relatively cheaper than it is now, or comparable to an existing home of the same size and quality. And now even that home that's of lesser quality, maybe better location, is still gonna be worth less than a brand new build in a lesser location. And I think that's a lot of the weight here is the cost to build new, between tariffs, even before tariffs, cost of labor, materials, water. I think that's something that's under discussed, is the cost of water per house on a new build in a new community. Water is now our new goal here locally. And that's what I hear from developers is, hey, I have to bring $3 million worth of water to this deal. It doesn't pencil anymore. It doesn't make sense to even start it. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong for them, but I'm just stating what I'm hearing in the marketplace is this cost of water and this cost of development and the home costs to get something through also raises the end consumer's price. If it took me 1 year to go from beginning to end, that's less hold costs, that's less expenses by the developer, which then translates to better costs for us as consumers. Whereas if it takes 3 to 5 years, so even 8 years to develop something, that's 8 years of them paying taxes, potentially having a loan to pay debt on. It all comes back to
Well,
us.
to a point, it doesn't even make sense anymore, and the project isn't complete.
Exactly, but it all comes at the end of the day back to us, the consumer. So whatever we put onto those developers and those things, I'm not saying, give them free rein by all. I'm just saying those costs all get passed back to us. So not from their perspective, not mine. But from what I understand is those costs get passed back to us as consumers. So we can lower those costs. I'm not saying I'm not trying to juice their pocketbooks, but it's more or less those costs factor back to us. So it's all more of a holistic from beginning to end picture of development. How do we lower it from the beginning to the end will help us in new home ownership and be able to buy something that's actually affordable versus it being the same price as that $1 million house, even though I'm in Erie, but it's the price of a home in Boulder.
Thank you.
I just want to go back to, and I appreciate that, I want to go back to, there's two things actually I want to discuss. Homeowner associations, once again, we're just gonna kind of beat that dead horse, I apologize, but it's one that's really, well, number one. For homeowner associations, for us in Colorado, we are a super lien state. So we have the most powerful lien on any of those properties with no regulation, none. As far as every other aspect of real estate, we are regulated. Real estate type, lending, insurance, all of these other areas are regulated. But the most powerful lien on the property, more powerful than the mortgage lien, is the one that can run them down and do whatever they want to do. It's wrong. It's just wrong. And it's also the number one growing issue when we have it here in Colorado. We had a situation in Denver. It's not here in Boulder, but it was in Denver that caught national attention. And that's because there are 23 states in the United States that have super lien Colorado. Colorado is one of them, but Colorado is the worst active when it comes to foreclosing on these homeowners in these communities. And then we also take a look at it, the process that they actually can, actually foreclose is a lot more accelerated than any mortgage lender. Mortgage lender actually has to go through the process of public trustee. A homeowner association does not. They can go to a sheriff's sale. Before 2-3 years ago, there was very little transparency. Now there's a little bit of transparency, but it's still not enough. A lot of these communities are finding ways to go around House Bill 1137. So don't be fooled. This stuff still exists, and we as real estate professionals are still seeing people suffer because of it. These communities are becoming growingly more undesirable to purchase in. So it's not because we don't have great units, we have great availability for people to purchase in these communities, but they are becoming very unattractive to a homeowner. And so that is an issue. I would be interested to find, and I did not run this study, and I don't know if maybe someone in your offices might be able to take a look into this, but how many condo or townhome subdivisions, I'm gonna say condos more so, that you have to have a growing number of vacancies because people have abandoned those units because they can't rent them out. Because you might have some rules within the association that you only have a certain number of rentals that they allow. So these people are just abandoning the units. How many are actually just not paying dues anymore because they can't afford it? So they just threw their hands up in the air. They have financial fatigue. And how many of them actually need some major repairs? They might have some leaking roofs. They might have some boilers that are expiring in their age. They don't work anymore. They might have a lot of they might have some mold issues, things that are actually going to make the whole building inhabitable if we're not going to do something. And I would like to see that, on any local municipalities or even our counties or even on our state level or even our federal level, that we're offering some type of subsidies to these communities to be able to get their situation up to par, so they're not having to gouge the owners in them with going up on every budget, because that's another thing too. I mean, the budgets are another thing. We have voter reform when it comes to homeowners association needs to be a thing. They can ratify their budgets by not having 67% of homeowners showing up to the meetings. How often can you show up 67% in your neighborhood with all your neighbors to say no to something? If 67% of the community does not show up at a meeting physically to say no, it passes. That's how they're able to get these things done. So I would like to see if we take a look at that. There's probably a lot of very attractive inventory. And I know a lot of things are being built right now, but we can actually utilize some of the stuff that we had that is available. It's already there. It's sitting because it is unattractive to the buyers right now because of what they'll have to deal with in the future.
Thank you. I'm gonna open up to elected officials in the room and online. Councilmember Nicole Spears online asking a question.
Yeah, I think I'll go ahead and read it. She mentioned she was sick. So Councilwoman Spear asked if non-owner occupied single family homes and attached units in Boulder County, do we know the breakdown between investment firm owned versus small local landlord owned?
Unfortunately, no, we don't have that data. It's purely based on mailing address compared to property address. To pull that, we would probably have to look at who has a common mailing address and sort that way, and then try to figure out what mailing address that belongs to. And normally it's an attorney who won't share who their clients are. So that's where there's a little bit of opaqueness on who the actual owners are. All we have is an address, and you can get pretty far, but from my experience dealing with the larger owners of investment properties, it all refers back to an attorney's office that you're never going to get comment from.
Yeah, I think one thing, maybe for state level data, we do have the task force on corporate ownership did some analysis, but to your point, it only goes so far. So maybe after this, we could share out what from the state level.
And a quick note on that, Vincent is putting in a geographical targeting order starting nationwide, I think March 1st, pending litigation, which is going to be applied to title companies. So FinCEN will have this data starting March, April of 2026. Now, I don't know how that corresponds to other departments, but as of 2026, FinCEN will be recording every entity that owns new property, any transaction across the country. From my understanding, that is owned by an LLC or another entity. We'll be having to give 120 plus data points of data, including all their bank accounts, socials, subsidiary owners. And I think that could be a source to track that information long term. That doesn't show current ownership, but at least show trends going forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else online? Any other questions online?
Not with questions.
Not with questions. Thank you. So let's go. Anyone in the room that has a question for folks at the table? Yes.
Thank you. I want to ask a question, and also I wanted to just, you said you can reflect based on what you heard. Thank you so much for this presentation. I'm grateful to be here to also learn the dire situation for a lot of families in Boulder County. What you mentioned around simple family dwelling costing over $100,000 in the average sale price of $1 million. We have to do more, and we certainly have to do better. Another question that I had was around the homestead law and creditors coming after people's equity home. I wanted you to talk a little bit more about that. I'm currently working on a medical debt bill, and that's something that we considered, but we did not go that deep into it because we didn't fully understand this policy area enough to know where to go with that. So I'd like to maybe even have an outside conversation with you.
I think it would be a great thing to say to the group. It's a growing issue.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to know more. If I didn't introduce myself, my name is Junie Joseph, State Representative out of Boulder House District 10. And again, I'm just grateful to be here because everything that you talk about here is extremely important to my district. How do we keep young people in Boulder? We have an aging population and not enough young people. And that's the problem for any. So we are a dying community because of affordability issue. So And I'd love to talk to you more as well about the House Bill 1137, which is a colleague of mine. And I'd like to know what else did we do, because you are the expert in the field and you know what's going on with past legislations, and we think, oh my God, we did the greatest thing since sliced bread, but we don't know the gaps. So I'd love to have a conversation with you. And to your point earlier, you mentioned something about portability, and I did not understand that word. Yeah.
You want me to? You want me to? Yeah. Well, the portability from the federal side of it, we're looking on the national side of it, and we have to, that agreement has to come from Congress and everything else. The ideal is that if you currently own a home and you bought it in the down market at 2 to 3%, your interest rate will be portable to go buy another property, which would free up more inventory costs. A lot of people say, I want to downsize, or I want to go a little bit bigger, but they're not ready for the 6 or 7% interest rate. And so if that would be sweet, if we can get that done. We do have some talks going on next week, because we're meeting again on the national level. I'm going to keep pushing that, because we did have some traction. I think that will open up a lot of inventory.
Milford, this brings a huge challenge. So we had a home, several listings that could have transferred to new buyers if they could have assumed that loan. But the lenders said, no, this loan is not assumable. So even when we have the existing and somebody willing to take it on, it's not doable. So would that then not stay with the owner? Can it have some transferability as well as portability? Do you know?
No.
Nuances?
Well, I mean, that did come up, but we were so excited about getting this first part even to the table. But that would be another way to free up inventory. I think that's I will take that this next week when we're meeting on the national level. I will take that forward as well. That comment.
Thank you. Well, I wanted you to just get a chance to respond to what Joseph said briefly.
Yeah, just very briefly. So, so obviously we have homestead law here in Colorado that protects up to $250,000 worth of equity for a primary residence versus an individual that they're selling against any creditors outside of those that have secured the loan. Like, it's not for the mortgage company, it's not for an HOA, but it is if you have a medical debt or something that you owe, if you have I don't know, another personal loan that you actually took out that actually had tried to state the claim when you're trying to sell your property. So I do want to say we have a list of foreclosures that are growing every week. So the list comes out. So as a real estate professional, we see the list getting bigger and bigger. There are a lot of factors that are happening, even when people can redeem their situations right now. Like I say, I have a very quickly a client that actually has lost everything, has some major health issues happening, has 4 children, still trying to hold on to the little bit of equity that he does have in his home to just be able to take care of his family, even as his health is declining. We are in the midst of, we have a buyer, we're in the midst of a contract, and we are held up because he has a creditor that has attached themselves to the lien of the property. And despite me finding an attorney to hire regarding the homestead law, who has done all the paperwork that's needed to be able to protect the $250,000 of bracket, which, and actually for health issues and for disabilities, you have up to $350,000, but we're not even looking for that. The proceeds that he would actually make in the sale are well less than $250,000, might be around like 90 to 100,000 that he would walk away with that. He wants to be able to just take care of his children with that money. Okay, just be able to get secure a new place for them to live and everything else. We have the creditor that will not move out of the way, and we have title companies. And I don't know if this means anything to you, but I searched and searched and searched. They will not touch it because of title insurance issue. They don't know that there could be a potential claim against this property. I mean, I'm sorry, against this the title with the next buyer. So this is a growing issue. You know, you have people who are trying to protect a little bit of money they have to be able to continue to have roofs over their heads. And then we have creditors that can say, you know, no, I don't care. Yeah. And it's a corporation that's just saying, you know, we don't really care, thank you. But no, thank you, we can't get all of our money. We're done with it.
Thank you. I'm watching the clock. I'm respecting everybody's time and the full things that were here. So each of the folks at the table, you have an opportunity to 45 seconds. One asks to elected official, it could be local, it could be state, it could be federal, because we've heard a little bit of, for me, every level of support that could be given to address this issue of the barriers we all talked about that are coming up, even at the very beginning of a home buyer wanting to buy a home in Colorado. So let's start, maybe we'll start right here and go this way.
Okay, real quick, I think a capital gain tax for homeowners as well, especially when one of the spouses pass away. A lot of times the lady that's left is struggling with, well, I want to sell this, but I got to pay capital gain tax. I don't think $250 capital gain tax on your property should go away, but that's my ask. Reduce the capital gain tax or give them more credit. I know there's a push out there to give 500. We shouldn't have capital gain tax on homes. After they build up their equity, we punish them for that.
Thank you. Sarah?
I have two asks, and this is on behalf of NARIP and the pillars or focal points that they support or advocate for. One is zoning and the land use reform. When we think about affordability, it's not just affordable homes. It's being able to have zoning regulations that tend to favor single family homes. We do need to have more condos, townhomes, because that is also affordable housing. And it just allows younger families or individuals that just need to be able to live within their city to be able to be those professionals or community leaders that we need. And then the second one, immigration reform. And that's a big one, not only because what we are seeing happening right now, but also consider this. Currently, an estimated 25% of construction workers aren't immigrant. An estimated 33% of tradesmen aren't immigrant. So this is having a huge impact when we have this administration going after undocumented people when it was supposed to be the criminals, but they're going off to the construction sites. They're going out to the landscaping sites. So it is ultimately going to affect the construction. It is ultimately going to affect housing when we don't have these tradesmen, when we don't have these construction workers. That is my ask.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess one I would say is homeowners association regulation. They need to be regulated. And two, I would say to reiterate this, homestead protection for title insurance. And being able to navigate that.
Thank you. Andrea?
I think a couple of people here pointed to us missing a product that people would need in Boulder specifically. And that's the single family home detached with a yard and 3-bed, 3-bath, something to that effect. The city's doing a tremendous job at growing the affordable housing opportunities that are out there. And then we got a whole bunch of high-end luxury. So just like our demographic, we're missing that middle class and that middle income product. So I would say look for those opportunities where we can do infill and redevelopment, incentivize the developers to give us that product that we are missing at the price point it's missing at, and to be able to reduce the price. I think like what Tucker was saying was lower down some of those fees, lower down some of the regulatory and costly barriers that gets people through the process quicker, and pilot that and see what we learn and try it somewhere. And in the city of Boulder and also other places, Boulder County, we got planning reserves that maybe we could start looking at that land use as those decisions are coming up to really try it there and see how far we can get and see where we can advance. And so what Laura just said about the trades, we're seeing that. landscaping crews and other contractors are losing people. And then they can't hire at a reasonable rate and find people, and they gotta keep upping their rate. And it's bringing more cost to the homeowner and then covering all the project landscape, et cetera.
Thank you, Francie. I think one solution to help this would be to have Fannie and Freddie revise their guidelines to allow a 10% deductible for the master policy to allow conventional financing instead of buyers having to try to get non-warrantable financing, which makes it not affordable because of the higher interest rates. Or they have to increase their HOA fees like we mentioned. And then also one quick thing is maybe trying to figure out a way to roll out a 40-year amortization option to help keep monthly payments down with interest rates being as high as they are, and the increase in property taxes and insurance, and having Fannie and Freddie back those kind of funding loans too. So, thank you. Right?
You know, I'd say more local level use and zoning to allow for, like Laura was saying, different mixed use properties, duplex, those that are missing. Streamline the approval process for projects. Developers I know often talk about holding being their largest expense. Cost of labor goes up, cost of materials go up by the time they start their planning to when they're getting approved, their numbers are way off. I'd say national at Fannie and Freddie, when you have multiple people that are trying to buy together, and you have, let's even say like a non-occupying co-borrower, and that pushes them out of that 80% AMI. There should be adjustments on that, especially when everyone knows, and you know, in a situation, that person that is that co-borrower isn't the one that's going to be paying. They're helping my client, who's a school teacher, who has to now move like 15 miles away from where she works, and so those would be things that would really help people get into those properties.
Thank you.
For me, my ask is, I believe requiring lenders to kind of notify the borrowers about loan modifications or payment relief options before they come to the default on this unavoidable. I think that's it, my ask.
Thank you.
Mine is simple. Allowed FHA to finance closing costs on refinances.
Thank you.
As Habitat International moves into its 50th anniversary in 2026, we ask for the creation of a federal home ownership supply accelerator. Senator Warnock's office is carrying the bill currently.
Thank you.
And information on that can be found at habitat.org/advocacy.
Thank you. We'll make sure we send that link out as follow-ups as well. I wanted to make sure, I don't know, Susan, if you had any questions for the last ask for folks, based on what you heard today.
I have lots of questions, but I've taken everybody's names.
Okay, perfect. And I wanted to make sure I didn't miss any of the electeds that might have had a question in the room, that what I realized came from behind you either, and I thought I saw. Councilmember Marta.
Just for the three different people who are recommending creating more opportunities for middle housing type, I am just making sure that you're advocating for ownership first, or if you're individual or rental or ownership.
Ownership.
Ownership, for sure.
Thank you. And if the county has information that talks about what people in the county are looking for and preferences, that would be helpful for the city to prioritize that specific housing. Right.
Thank you. And that was probably the best setup for a close in a conversation. And I say that really seriously because I'm involved in with our housing department with Boulder County Housing Authority as a director of that group. We are just now BCHA on this property. There's always a reason why we're here and where we're at or together. Because this project, which is our largest affordable housing project for Boulder County Housing Authority, will have its next, did I go the wrong direction? The next phase will be a homeownership component, which is new for us. And we are all in on how we are going to answer the call to homeownership. And so from Boulder County's perspective, we will continue to look for units versus fee in lieu. We are looking for opportunities, and I will just say from my own personal perspective, because I know some of you heard the table from my previous life and strong commitment about why housing is so critical for every Coloradoan, that we continue to be very fierce in the conversation about homeownership, and that we look at standing inventory. That 18%, if we could get a crack at that 18% of standing inventory in our own county, then we are reducing the climate impacts. We are supporting people for all the reasons that you're talking about, and we are also not dealing with a lot of the process pieces that we hear about when we focus on new construction. And I appreciate folks taking time, sharing your experiences, being here on a Friday afternoon before our holiday potential weekend for folks. Certainly want to acknowledge the veterans in the room and veteran families and significant others, because that's a significant commitment. It's all part of the American dream. And I want to appreciate the staff who's here from Boulder County who have supported this conversation and taken care of all the pieces in the background with the Zoom and all the other work. I hope that everyone here will take a moment to connect with others in the room, and everyone at this table has offered to be a resource. And my belief is that this type of roundtable is how we're going to build up coalitions to be able to provide testimony for bills, to be able to go to your city council chambers and share stories and experiences. Because if we don't widen the net in this conversation, my belief is we will be where we are right now in Boulder County in 10 years with a numbers that do not reflect what this group is saying that we want to have done in regards to homeownership. So I'm just super appreciative. I do want to offer a very, very brief tour if anybody is interested in just hearing a little bit more about this complex. And it's also Friday afternoon, and we are done with our time. Thank you to Senator Bennett's team for being here and helping us, and also Congressman Jesus' team and all the other elected officials who've been here. Thank you so much. Thank you.